Steppenwolf Theater presents Windfall. It's a world premiere from Academy Award-winning writer and ensemble member Terrell Alvin McCraney. Windfall is about a Chicago father who loses his child in a clash with police. He's then visited by three strangers who advise him, take the cash settlement and get out of town. It's a communal experience created for this moment. Windfall runs now through May 31st. Don't miss this world premiere production and get your tickets today at steppenwolf.org.
We're not saying a visit to Bloomington, Indiana will turn you into a forest-bathing, sandal-wearing, dissertation-defending, stray cat rescuing, nonprofit starting, Monroe Lake paddling, guitar strumming, march organizing, vinyl listening, leaf watching, zen finding, coffee roasting, yoga practicing, beer drinking, bread baking, co-op joining, pottery throwing, vintage thrifting, bike everywhereing, art appreciating, farmers market shopping, biz thinking, football fan. But we're not saying it won't. Visit Bloomington. See how it inspires you.
Today on CityCast Chicago, what is going on over at the restaurant Warlord in Avondale? Is the DMV, dare I say, a pleasant experience now? And what Chicagoan deserves a big budget biopic? It's Thursday, April 30th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I've got two absolutely amazing contributors in the building with us. Freelance journalist Lee John Greco is back with us. Lee, good to see you.
Hey, good to see and hear from you as always, Jacoby.
Always a pleasure to have you in the building. We've also got performer Al Scorch back with us. Al, it's good to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jacoby. Good to see you.
People, if you can't tell already, these are two voices that you're going to be hearing more from over the next few months, and we're excited to see all of the stories they bring for us to discuss and break down. But before we get into today's stories, I got a question I've been posing all week long. What is something in Chicago that is worth you standing in a busted-ass, long-ass line for, right? We have talked about pop-up bagels, Joe Fresh Goods, Gym Shoes, new bakeries in the city. Lee, what is something that is worth your time that you will go already expecting to be standing in line and you will brave it? What's worth it for you?
I would have to say Del Sur. I went there when they first opened last spring. It was right around this time. I don't know if the line has gone down since then, but it went. So a little background, Del Sur's awesome bakery over on the north side. It's almost directly under the Damon Brown line.
Saw Damon and Wilson.
Yeah. And it's awesome. I think what I will say is that if you can wait in line on like a nice day and you know there's going to be a line and you bring a book or a newspaper or even like I think when I was in line, I just like called my mom. That one would definitely say that's worth it.
I'm on their Instagram right now. They have been open for a little under a year and I don't think the line has gone down. Al, what about you? What is worth braving a long line for?
This might seem out of character or something, but if you haven't done it, you got to do it at least once, maybe with some friends from out of town. But it really is worth it to at least once. At least once.
Are you finna say the Ferris wheel?
Oh, you got me.
The Ferris wheel?
It was the disclaimer. It was the disclaimer. I could feel we was going to Navy
Pier.
Pier.
Both know that that's what it was going to be. I was thinking like a music venue or something.
No, because
I could feel it in the setup.
You could tell. I was hedging. I was quantifying. I was doing it all. So why that is because as a Chicagoan, there's just this unspoken thing where you don't do any tourist things at all. And there's like kind of like a shame around it or whatever, but that Ferris wheel is an amazing view of the city. And it's a really cool way to spend time with people, like, especially if you have people visiting from out of town. And it's just such an experience. Like, where else can you go on a giant revolving wheel that is also like connected to Chicago history, is part of the World's Fair? But that line is worth waiting. And if it's a nice day on Navy Pier, you're in the lake breeze, you're people watching, you see all these people from all over the world. And so I would say that's worth it. And the view is so cool because you're out on the pier and then
Yeah.
you get up. So it's a view like you could only get that view from like a helicopter tour or something.
Wow.
And so the line is a little crazy sometimes because they fill up that whole Ferris wheel and everyone gets
Yep.
on
Yeah.
there.
It's enclosed
then-
though, right? Like
You're like in
yeah.
a little gondola type little car, and you sit, and it's very cool.
Al, I'm so glad you mentioned the Ferris wheel because I remember I put my friend on Devil in the White City, which I know is also like basic, but she doesn't even live in Chicago. And after she finished it, she's like, I want to go and go to Chicago and go on the Ferris wheel. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go on the Ferris wheel
And
now.
the one they're thinking about from the World's Fair was now, I believe, demolished 120 years ago. But that original one, each one was like a train car. And so the Ferris wheel that's there now is a replacement from the 1995 Ferris wheel. It debuted in 2016, so it's about to celebrate 10 years. And I will say, I have been on it exactly once. I hate to use this segue, but the very first time I ever heard of Warlord in Avondale, the first thing I heard was there are no reservations and there's almost always a long line you have to wait in just to get a seat. And back in 2023, when they opened that summer, I braved that long line. I enjoyed the restaurant. But soon after, I started hearing these rumblings that maybe wasn't a great place to work, to be an employee, that verbal abuse and other things were being tolerated inside the restaurant, which when we think about the restaurant industry at large, especially after, seeing the Bear or seeing the Charlie Trotter documentary, I think have kind of normalized that the restaurant is a space that abuse is inherent or tolerated, or if anything, expected. And Lee, in many ways, the story of Warlord has transformed in their 3 years of being open into one about how abuse, particularly in the restaurant industry, still largely goes unchecked in some places. So let's kind of talk through this entire saga. I know it did a lot of setup, but what the hell is going on with Warlord now?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here that we have to unpack, Jacoby. So the latest is that Warlord was supposed to expand to a second location in Humboldt Park. The Sun-Times reported that those plans are called off now. So co-owners Emily Krasik confirmed to the Sun-Times that they won't expand to the former home of Feed Diner, and her business partner, John Lupton, confirmed that as well. Now, Krasik and Lupton were partners, or at least former partners now at this point, with Trevor Fleming, who, as you have kind of mentioned, was in 2023 this critical darling, right, of the Chicago restaurant industry. When Warlord opened, they had lines going out the door. They were named, one of the top restaurants in the city and everything. But then word started getting around that not only was there verbal abuse going on at this restaurant, but also sexual abuse at the hands of Trevor Fleming. So now to kind of take you back a little bit and give a little more background on this, going back to January, chef and co-owner Trevor Fleming was charged with sharing explicit images of a woman that he dated without her consent. So on January 18th, he was released under electronic monitoring. Sun-Times was first to report this. Block Club did more reporting on this as well. They spoke with several people who used to work at the restaurant, women who talked about this pattern of sexual abuse that Fleming had with his female employees, the fact that he berated staff in public. And the kind of crazy thing about this is that the sources that Block Club spoke to said that Fleming's co-owners, Krasik and Lupton, had known about this. So then, of course, the co-owners broke away from him. They sued Fleming because, once word got out in kind of restaurant circles and also media that this guy was an abusive person, Warlord's business just cratered. And so now you have kind of a couple things going on. You have the co-owners suing Fleming. You have this second location that is not going to happen. Another little interesting wrinkle here is that Warlord's second location was supposed to be named Lord, which people in the neighborhood did not like. Alderman Gil Villegas didn't like this because, of course, if you know a little bit of history about Humboldt Park, the Young Lords were a Puerto Rican street gang in the 60s and 70s. They're kind of like the Black Panthers, who, much like the Black Panthers, advocated for healthcare, housing, employment.
And they grew also into very much a advocacy organization focusing on like the civil rights of Puerto Ricans who had largely been kicked out of gentrified out of Lincoln Park and pushed into Humboldt Park during the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. There was actually a really interesting exhibit about them at the museum at DePaul, which is already closed at this point or is going to close. So sadly you can't check that out. There are so many problematic facets to this story. And like you said, Jacoby, I think it speaks to a larger problem in the restaurant industry, not just in Chicago, but, I've worked in the restaurant industry, when I was in college, after college. That was in Buffalo, wasn't here in Chicago, but, and also kind of briefly in DC right before the pandemic. And there are a lot of great things about the restaurant industry. It's super exciting, super dynamic, creative. I think even the hours itself and just the pace of the restaurant industry, it's not a great industry if you are susceptible to not only just abuse from people, but also like drug abuse too, and alcohol, because you have those things readily available. And also, you talk about like vulnerable people in the restaurant industry. There are a lot of people who have different like immigration statuses. So there are people who are vulnerable in that way. I think one of the great things about the restaurant industry is it's one of the few industries that readily welcomes people who have recently gotten out of the system, gotten out of the criminal, out of prison and everything, which a lot of other businesses don't. But that's another way that like people can be vulnerable too. And so all these different elements can create kind of a perfect storm for abuse and everything. But I think this is another reason why it's so important to have outlets like Block Club, like the Sun-Times, even like Michael Nagrant he reported on this early on in his newsletter, because covering restaurants is not just about who is the greatest chef and who has, the nicest pastries, let's say, and everything.
Or what's opened and what's closed recently.
Yeah, it's also about people and, frankly, a lack of HR too. Like if you have one restaurant rather than say like a restaurant group, it's kind of like the political stories that I've done too, reporting on the Hill. Like, honestly, the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, oh my God, like politics and the restaurant industry are so similar. Like the Hill is like crazy hours, basically no human resources. It's just like you are paying your dues and everything. Like, God, the more I think about it, the more there are so many parallels here. And it requires a level of reporting that is very rigorous and also level of empathy too, because the victims of this abuse have been through so much and don't often want to come forward because there's a huge power dynamic here when you have somebody who is this chef that has been lauded by people in the industry. And also, are just a lot of layers to this. And I'm glad there's been reporting on this specific restaurant, but I also think there are probably so many other restaurants that need to be covered.
That part. And I appreciate how you've recentered the people who were most impacted by this, right? Those people who were abused, people who were let go in the restaurant industry, people who were intimidated, potentially out of coming forward. Because as much as I appreciate all of this coverage, I would hate for this story to simply become about how this potentially hot restaurant lost a bunch of money. And then the aside is because one of their co-owners was accused of sexually abusing and verbally abusing staff members. Like before these stories were even reported at the top of this year, before Trevor was, kicked out of the restaurant group, I started seeing some of these rumblings. After I visited in 2023, I think early in 2024, before anybody had come forward, there were Reddit threads going around from people who claimed to be former employees who said, I have watched up front the type of abuse that's taking place in this restaurant from Fleming's end, but also that people were aware of this, right? These things were not siloed. These didn't just happen off the clock in Fleming's personal life. These are things that happen in front of kitchen, back of house. And so if there is a sense that these other two co-owners, two people who were also responsible for stewarding this restaurant and protecting these employees, if it comes out that they tolerated this or that they turned a blind eye up until it blew up in the media, then not only should they not be expanding somewhere else, but I do think we should be taking a close consideration of how is this behavior enabled as well. And so we're going to drop some links to the full reporting in our show notes. Now, if you are like me and you love theater that sparks conversation long after the curtain call, then listen up. Timeline Theater is bringing An Enemy of the People to the stage this spring, and the Chicago premiere at Timeline's new home at 5035 North Broadway in Uptown. This gripping play tackles big questions about truth, integrity, and what it costs to stand your ground when the entire crowd turns against you. Even though it's a classic story, the issues feel urgent, modern, and let's just say very Chicago. An Enemy of the People runs May 6th through June 7th, and it's the perfect choice for anybody who wants theater that challenges, provokes, and entertains all at once. Get your tickets and details at timelinetheater.com. The Pulitzer Prize and Tony Award-winning musical South Pacific is coming to the Paramount Theater in downtown Aurora, and it's got everything folks have come to love about the World War II drama. Spy missions, captivating love stories, and of course, all the classic songs like Some Enchanted Evening, Bolly Hey, I'm Gonna Wash That Man Right Out of My Hair. South Pacific is running from April 29th to June 14th at Paramount Theater, and tickets start at $31 when purchased in person. There are additional fees when you buy it on your phone or online. You can get your tickets today at ParamountAurora.com. Al, before you came on the podcast this week, I saw that you took a little visit over to one of Chicago's DMVs. What was the experience like for you? Was it better or worse than you expected?
It was surprisingly smooth, surprisingly streamlined. I just went to get my driver's license renewed, not a real ID, nothing like that. So I think I got off easy. I did make a comical video about the experience, kind of in character, mostly just because I think Janulius is a hilarious name to say in a thick Chicago accent. This Janulius guy, you know, he really got things streamlined. So like, and this gets into the kind of thing, like some of these videos I do, like I'm doing a character. Like I don't talk like that. But back to the DMV, I made this video where I'm like, Janulius, he really streamlined things, and Jesse White was behind the times. So I want to come on here and set that record straight. That Jesse White built the track upon which Janulius runs. Okay, Jesse White. He was the Secretary of State of Illinois from like 98 to like 2023, like a couple years ago. He retired because he turned like 89. He wanted to do other stuff. He's like, you know what, I'm done. But he got the Secretary of State and like Drive Illinois, all this stuff. He got it online super early. Jesse White really was the one who modernized the Secretary of State system. And so some things you need appointments for post-COVID. I think some of the more in-depth kind of things, it's always better to have an appointment, and then make sure you go on that Secretary of State website. Make sure you have all the documentation you need, because there's nothing worse than getting up to that front counter and then being like, well, you need this and this. You know, you need a bank statement, not just a letter from your bank. And like, I didn't know that. I overheard that in line. I was like, oh, I feel bad for them.
No.
And so I get my number. I get my picture taken right away for my new license. I I go to the restroom, got to check out the bathroom down there. And by the time I got up, I almost missed my number. They called it so fast. And I get up to the guy and I'm like, this is crazy fast. He's like, yep, the faster we are, the less we're in danger of AI taking our jobs.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, that really hit me.
And was this an express one?
That's a hell of a response.
No, this was at the facility on Elston. So really, really big facility. One of the bigger facilities where they administer driving tests and stuff like that. So that really struck me because I'm like, oh yeah, if it's already incredibly efficient, they can't say, oh, we need to bring AI in and like get rid of all these people's jobs. And it's like, that makes so much sense because those Secretary of State jobs, those DMV jobs, those are salary jobs with a pension, with benefits. And we all know that those are all trying to get taken away right now by the powers that be. And, it's the first thing that gets cut. So it's like, AI is you don't have to pay all these benefits. You just have computers do it. It's like, what? So we can all like drive Uber Eats until we, go to
we can't even do that
because
of the Cocos and the little things that are named after people.
The things attacking all of our bus stops.
For real.
I wanted to ask, have you gotten a sense, even from not your experience, but just kind of looking back and reading up on the DMV, what are some of those changes that they've implemented maybe in recent years or in recent memory that have helped expedite this system?
Well, I think getting stuff online is huge, and they're doing like a ton of renewal stuff. You can renew online, just more and more things you can do online. I just keep noticing
license
like, you
plate
can do this
sticker,
online.
driver's license, state ID.
So a lot of just getting less people to have to go to the DMV so they can do more of the stuff you have to do in person, like address changes, driver's tests, things like that. So it really seems like it's super streamlined, and even just like the time that the person is working on processing whatever procedure you're doing there is less. It seems like their internal system, from watching the clerks kind of work through stuff with people are moving fast.
So
I think internally it's been really streamlined.
Yeah. They've updated their computer systems, I believe, and some of their software. I think one of the things that have helped lessen the rush to the DMV, like you say, they've expanded those online services. They've added those 24/7 kiosks where you can do things without going inside their drive-up facilities. They've also created some more senior-only facilities so that our elders aren't waiting in those long lines with us, that they have facilities they can go to in particular, as well as appointment only. Now, this can be difficult because sometimes when I'm looking for an appointment, I remember last time I had to take my road test, I ended up going all the way to Aurora because I needed it as fast as possible. But I do appreciate that there was certainty there. I knew where I needed to be, what time I needed to be there versus, when I was coming up, it was just, I'm going to go to the DMV early in the morning, as early as possible, and I'm going to just sit there until my number is called. But the idea that, you were maybe putting it off, and once you went, it kind of went against that expectation. It doesn't have to be this way, right? We can push back on these, or we can change them. We can modernize, we can update. And I hope that, people who are hearing this, who have a bunch of DMV hate in their heart and see it as one of the 7 circles of hell, maybe soften to it a little bit and realize that some improvements have been made in the last 2 sets of state. Talking about Jesse White, we about to enter into tumbling season. We're finna go back outside, every parade, every street festival. You are lucky if you look up and the Jesse White tumblers are there.
It's absolutely incredible. I saw them at so many block parties growing up, so many community events. They would come out and, in youth, as like a little stupid kid, you're like, the Secretary of State has a tumbling team. That's hilarious. Look at this old man on the back of back of this thing. That's, when you're 11 years old, that is comedy gold. You're like, but as you grow up, you realize just how important someone like Jesse White is, who is, he was born in the 30s. Like, he is from this generation where people did stuff. I think of my grandpa too was like this, where he just had, like, how did he do so much? Like, he was all city baseball and basketball when he went to Waller High School, which is now Lincoln Park High School. And then he went to college at Alabama State, where he played both sports again. And then he came back up here and he played for the Cubs minor league team, in a baseball system that had just been integrated, like, like what was like the late 40s that they kind of like integrated baseball. So Jesse White's in there being an athlete in this newly integrated baseball system. And then he starts working for CPS as an administrator. And then he gets into public service. He's a state senator. And then he's the Cook County Recorder of Deeds. And then he's the Secretary of State for, what is that, 25 years?
And this entire time he's coaching gymnastics. Like the Tumblers came out in what, 59?
59.
So he also grew up as a gymnast too then?
Yeah, he was a college gymnast.
I feel like 30% of black kids was gymnasts. Like, we all was flipping on mattresses. I swear to God, at least half of my class knew how to do a backflip. Just off GP. Just right. They knew how to do it.
Somersaults, I think, and probably in Chicago, so much of that was your experience because of Jesse White, because tumbling was just part of.
My homie was a tumbler. My uncle was a tumbler.
And there's some really great videos on Chicago Media Burn Archive. If you haven't checked that out, there's a bunch of awesome stuff from the early 80s. Jesse White with the tumblers in the hallways and breezeways of Cabrini Green, and just, it really gives you the sense of what the Jesse White tumblers and Jesse White means to Chicago. And, there's just nobody like him. And he's still kicking. He was on WGN News like a couple months ago talking about the tumblers, and the man's 92.
Do you know, like, can still do a little bit. I'd love to know like what Jesse White can still do in
he's
terms
hitting the
of
gym.
Yeah.
For sure.
He and Janulius should go head to head.
Well, Janulius played basketball after college too. He played pro basketball in Greece, and it's like, okay, so our legacy in Illinois is we have ballers as our Secretary of State. Now, Jesse White. What I love about Jesse White is he was more. I think of him more as a public servant than a politician. He really just seemed to, in his heart, feel like a love for the city and the people of the city, and wanted to bring everybody up and engage the community and provide all these resources. And you got the feeling of that, which is so funny to say, from like a public office. And this isn't like a negative thing, but just something I noticed. I think Janulius might be a little more of a politician.
For sure.
Than Jesse White was a public servant. And this, I'm just opining as a contributor to CityCast. My views do not represent CityCast Chicago. My views are my own. Janulius, he's going to try to be mayor. I see what he's doing.
I think talking of Jesse White kind of is a great transition into this next one, because he's such a monumental figure. I could imagine someone wanting to make a movie about him, trying to figure out how to make that a big blockbuster for the international and national audience who has no nostalgic connection to the Tumblers like the rest of us. Got me thinking, like, who is a Chicagoan musician or broader figure who you think could get like the Michael Jackson big budget biopic treatment? Like, who do you think deserves that from our Chicago pantheon? Lee, I'm gonna start with you.
I feel like most deserving is probably Earth, Wind, and Fire. I think people would love that. I was so glad to see Sabrina Carpenter brought them out at Lollapalooza. I feel like Earth, Wind, and Fire is the bedrock of so much of our modern music, and, we should give them their due. I do think, and I know we're like not supposed to talk about them anymore, but like, yeah, because it would be interesting, right? Like, it would be really dramatic, and like, I don't know, he is like, I do still think he's a musical genius. I think he's a bad person. I also think like he is struggling with like severe mental health issues. And I think like, I don't think he's a bad person because of that. I think he's just like, I think both those things can be true. So I do think like he would be an interesting guy to see a movie about.
I'm gonna agree with that. Going back to your first one, I'd love to see like the White brothers, like Maurice White, Verdine White, like their story coming up. How does this lead to Earth, Wind, and Fire? I mean, it's 10 years since Maurice died, and so I would be down for that. I would be down for that. Staying in like a musical space, Shaka Khan. I know it's been thrown around a few times.
Yeah.
Like Shaka Khan biopic. At one point, I remember Ava DuVernay and maybe Cynthia Erivo being connected to, and then very cliche, but Harold Washington. Like the story of Harold Washington and the Council Wars. I mean, Daniel Kaluuya has already, he also, British, but he had already played a Chicagoan and Fred Hampton. But there's something about that sort of square head that Harold Washington got that a ton of people don't got. And so I'd love to see a Washington biopic. Al, what about you? Who do you think you want to add to that list? We got Earth, Wind, and Fire. We got Ye. We got Harold Washington, Shaka Khan.
Oh man, all heavy hitters. Just a second, the Harold Washington one. That would be amazing. And what a character to do. Just gravitas, man. What a honor to play that would be as an actor. I think
maybe Sterling K. Brown. Maybe you put some gray on Sterling K. Brown, make him grow
age
one of
him
those.
A little bit.
Yeah, give him one of those mustaches.
I would say that what we need is we could really use a Baby Huey and the Babysitters movie as far as getting this kind of untold story of Chicago music that is really, really influential. So Baby Huey, I think his name was James Ramsey. I looked it up. He was this larger than life band leader singer who died in 1970. He died really young. And Baby Huey and the Babysitters played all over Chicago, North Side, South Side. My mom used to see him play high school dances back in the 60s. And they were beginning to work with Curtis Mayfield. He produced some music for them. And that record that came out, they had one record, and it is one of the most sampled records for hip hop in history.
Wow.
Wu-Tang Clan uses a ton of it. Baby Hugh and the Babysitters were like the country's party band. They played at the White House, and you listen to it and you just hear this, it just breaks your heart because you hear how they would have progressed musically, because you hear them playing all this kind of classic soul and rock and roll 60s party band music. But then by the late 60s, they were kind of getting psychedelic, kind of Sly Stone, Afrofuturist, like really pushing the envelope musically, stylistically. Baby Huey started using like kind of like a talk box, like vocoder, like breathe in the tube, kind of like Stevie does that sometimes. And just this story of an amazing artist whose light was put out too early. And just the music is so good.
I've never even heard of them. That's so cool.
It's a deep Chicago cut. Like if you grew up in Chicago, or you're into like DJ producing, or you're deep into Chicago music, Baby Huey and the Babysitters are just like, that's how you'd know about them. But they never achieved like pop success. And also Baby Huey was like a big ass dude. He was like, they call him Baby Huey because he weighed like 400 pounds.
Oh my God.
But he was like this graceful presence on stage. He played keyboards, he sang, he danced and moved around. And so I would love to see the Baby Huey and the Babysitters movie.
I want to hear from everybody who made it to this part of the episode. Reach out to us, 773-780-0246. Money was no object. What Chicagoan would you make a big budget biopic for? I want to give an absolute huge thank you to our guest today, City Gas Chicago contributors, Lee John Greco. An absolute pleasure. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Jacoby.
And Al Scorch, thank you for making time. We'll see you back very soon.
Yeah, see you, Jacoby. Thanks for having me.
To everybody listening, I appreciate you making time for CityCast Chicago. Please share us with your friends and family. And when you get some time, head over to our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you can catch up on old podcast episodes, subscribe to our daily newsletter, and you can check out our events calendar. Speaking of special events, some good news. Today is my birthday, y'all. I am officially 35, and I spent it with y'all recording the podcast. I hope
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Jacoby.
Thank you. I really appreciate y'all. I would say no other place I'd rather be, but we all know that ain't true. But I was happy to be here with y'all. Shout out to all of my friends who had birthdays in April. Chris, John, Natalie, Darius, our old executive producer, Carrie, my homie Lo, to all of the April birthdays in my life. I see y'all. I love y'all. Let's close this month out strong. We are going to be back bright and early tomorrow. You don't want to miss out. I'll talk to you then. Peace.